The hijackers weren't here to take prisoners. They didn't take any hostages. Death was the only option that they offered that day. I've been told that by the end of the year 2018, which was only 17 years after the event, that more people had died from the effects of cancer than had actually died on that day. So that number has more than doubled. While I was in New York with the young people and with the adults that went with me, we heard a lot of stories. We read a lot of stories at the museum. Cheryl's sister came over and shared her story. She lived right there. And one of our elders, Kerry Paul, went on that trip with us, and he shared a story. And I'm going to ask him to come up here to the podium, if you would, Kerry, and share that one and perhaps the other one that you shared with me earlier.
He didn't tell me he's going to show all these videos and stuff, so I hope I can get through this. A couple years after 9/11, though, we had a high school reunion. I won't tell you how many years it was, but it was significant. One of the guys I had gone to high school with, we got started talking about 9/11, and he says, well, I was there at the Pentagon. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. He had had an appointment in the Pentagon with a senator and some high-ranking military folks on a business transaction with the Pentagon. And before the senator had gotten there, and they called him out and says, you've got to come. And he was told, you got to leave. No explanation, no wondering what was happening. Well, he was wondering, but no explanation of what was happening. So he was leaving, and he was parked a long ways away from the Pentagon, and he sees the plane coming in very low across the parking lot. Now, this was a guy that was a sniper in Vietnam, so he had seen a lot of stuff. But he said in the window, the plane was low enough that he could see in the window, and there was a face of a woman, kind of like, can you help me? You know, the terror that was on her eyes. And he said, that's something I've just not been able to shake. So, I mean, here was a guy that was seeing some pretty rough things, but he was there and witnessed the plane hitting into the Pentagon. Changed his life in many ways. While we were away in Ohio going to church up there, one of my fellow members up there was a fellow that worked with the Red Cross. And he was John was a very organized guy. He could deal with a lot of things. So he dealt with, local fires where maybe there was loss of life, trying to help people get things squared away. He was good enough at it that the Red Cross had him as one of the people when there were major disasters like floods and tornadoes and so on like that. He was one of the people that they had come to those locations. And as 9/11 occurred, they asked him to go to New York to participate in trying to help people get through the aftermath of 9/11. And he was telling me, he says, I've talked to a lot of people that had a lot of loss, but he was helping a lady, and her husband had been killed, and she had a little boy with him, and he was trying to get them through that. And he says, this is the single roughest thing I've ever had happen in trying to help people. Because the little boy looked up at me and said, will you be my daddy? That little boy's life was changed significantly, as was John's, by just trying to help him.
As a result of the events of 9/11, 181,510 Americans enlisted in active duty military, and 72,908 entered the reserves. What do we do when change is forced on us? How do we handle it? And I'd like to remind us, and maybe help you remind yourself how you handled that. There were a lot of songs written about that time, about how we handle events like this. There were a lot of people that were really angry. There were a lot of people that were really happy. There were a lot of people who would call themselves Christians, who had friends who may have been Muslim, who those people didn't do this horrible thing, but now those people were viewed as enemies. People were scared. People were afraid of what could happen next. They were afraid of who can you trust and who can't you. I remember specifically that week after the events of 9/11, we held a prayer vigil here at the church. This was before we even built this side of the building. And someone that came to that prayer vigil because she is darker skinned, she was viewed at her work as an enemy. And she came here to pray with us because she was hurting. And she's been a member of this church since then. That's Lizette Hill. There were a lot of emotions wrapped up in all this. And I think when things like this happen, we ask questions. How could individuals be so hate-filled, so angry, maybe even so evil that they would do something like this without any concern for the innocent loss of life that happened that day? I can't wrap my head around that. I think one of the questions that we ask is, where were you? But I think another question we ask, and we don't verbalize this, especially those of us who are followers of God, but one of the things we frequently think is, where was God? Where was he on that day? Was it a day off? Was he just not paying attention? I've discovered a few things. I've learned a few things since then, and I want to share those with you today. And I hope that it's something that we can kind of tuck away for maybe the next time a major event happens in your life. And it doesn't have to be a national tragedy like this, but when something comes your way and changes unexpectedly, I want you to tuck this in the back of your head. When changes happen to your health that you didn't see coming, you've done everything you can to take care of yourself, and then all of a sudden you end up with this disease that you didn't ask for, and you didn't live the kind of life that should have earned it, but now you have it. When people leave you, when you thought they were there for you, I want you to keep this stuff tucked into the back of your mind. The first thing I learned is that, number one, God is big enough to handle our questions. Amen. He has broad shoulders. God is not petty. God is great big. And the truth is, he never gave up on me, even in those moments when I was probably giving up on him. Even when I'm asking these questions, these kind of deep, philosophical questions maybe that you should know the answer to. Yes, God is always there, but man, when something tragic like this happens, now you're like, well, but is he? Was he there? And God is big enough to handle those questions. But the second thing I learned was that I wasn't the first person to ever question God. If you read your Bible, you're going to see it happen time and time again. Psalm 10, verse 1, the writer says, "Why do you stand afar off, O Lord? Why do you hide in times of trouble?" I could list all kinds of moments when people questioned God. This one we don't talk about very much because it doesn't seem like it's part of his personality, but even Jesus. You remember in Matthew 27, when he's praying in the garden, what did he say? When he's on the cross, what does he say? Anybody? my God, where are you, God? Did you abandon me? Did you leave me at the moment of my greatest need? Because, see, when we go through tragic times like this, when change is forced on it, it sometimes causes us to act out of character. I was out of character for Jesus. He knew where God was. He was God. But man, when we go through tragic moments, it can bring some stuff out of us that we don't expect. And again, God is big enough to handle our questions. The third thing I learned was that while 9/11 was new for us, it was not new for God. God's been here before. God's been here all throughout history when tragic things happen. And I want you to go to Jeremiah chapter 52. You're probably thinking, about time we got some Bible in here. Jeremiah chapter 52. Jeremiah chapter 52 is the last chapter, if you will, in this book. And it coincides with the first chapter of Lamentations, which is the next book. They happen at the same time. And in Jeremiah chapter 52, I'm going to read in verses 12 through 14. This is, well, I'll read it and you'll figure it out. On the 10th day of the 5th month, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard who served the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. The enemy came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. The whole Babylonian army under the commander of the imperial guard broke down all the walls around Jerusalem. That sounds like 9/11 in New York and at the Pentagon. Lamentations chapter 1 verse 1 says, "How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she who once was great among the nations. She who was queen among the provinces has now become a slave." I think that captures the emotions that we felt on 9/11. Theirs wasn't 9/11. Theirs was probably, let's look back at verse 12. Theirs was probably 5/10. On the 10th day of the 5th month, Jerusalem's walls came tumbling down. This was their 9/11. I want to look at how they responded. Look at Lamentations 1, start in verse 11. It says, "All her people groan as they search for bread. They barter their treasures for food to keep themselves alive. Look, Lord, and consider, for I am despised. Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look around and see. Is any suffering like my suffering that was inflicted on me, that the Lord brought on me in the day of his fierce anger? From on high he sent fire, sent it down into my bones. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He made me desolate, faint all the day long." 9/11 was new for us, but it wasn't new for God. He's been here before. Because God, I think like he did us, pulled Jerusalem out of the ashes. Just like he did for New York. Just like he did for the Pentagon. And as bad as we look at our country even today with the pandemic, and I mean, think about the pandemic, folks. What kind of emotions did that event that was forced on us, what kind of emotions did that bring out in you? Did you get mad when the government told you had to wear a mask? Did you get mad at your friends when it was optional to wear a mask and they chose not to? See, sometimes when tragic things happen, instead of rushing to God and asking for help, we start pointing fingers. We start trying to create an enemy where there isn't one. Just like we did at 9/11. There were Muslims who I wish were Christians But there were Muslims who were good people who were treated horribly after 9/11, and they had nothing to do with what happened. We got nervous around people we shouldn't have gotten nervous around. Same thing happened to us with the pandemic. We started pointing fingers and making people that didn't think like me and didn't respond to the pandemic the way I did, now they're bad people. They don't care about anybody. Or they're trying to take my freedom away, or they're trying to you guys hear what I'm saying? When this stuff comes, we need to run to God first. And always. I want you to look at how it turned out for the people in that day. If you look in chapter 3 of Lamentations, this is what it says. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, O God. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him. To the one who seeks him, it is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. We turned this into a song. It goes like this, and you can sing it with me. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Sing it, church. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Therefore I will hope in him. See, doesn't that feel better than anger? Doesn't that feel better than hate? Doesn't that feel better than hopelessness? Church, our God gives us hope in the darkest moments of our lives. All we got to do is reach out for him and look for it and open our eyes and ask him to help us see it. It doesn't mean that that bad thing now is good. That bad thing still gets to be bad. But it means that we have hope in someone who is greater than all that. And we can walk through this life with our heads up. And we can walk through this life without fear. We can walk through this life without trembling and letting the moment define us. I want to give us one more example. If you turn to John chapter 11. Another example of a couple of folks who questioned Jesus, who questioned God. This is after, of course, for those of you that know, some may not, that's okay. This is after the death of Lazarus, who was one of Jesus' good friends. He was good friends with his sisters too, Mary and Martha. At 10:59 Central Time, 9:59 Eastern Time, the South Tower of the World Trade Center began to collapse. With people still running down the stairs, trying to get away, 56 minutes after the airplane crashed into it, it came tumbling down. Let's offer a moment of silence, please. I wish that when tragedies like this happen in our lives, we could do just that. Instead of feeling like we have to have something to say, I wish we could just drop to our knees and enjoy some moment of silence with God and ask Him to take it. Ask Him to own it. Ask Him to take the burden off of me. So Lazarus has died. Jesus had been informed and chose not to go at the moment he was informed, and by the time he arrives, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. And when Jesus is approached by Mary and Martha, it says in verse 17 of John 11, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Martha gets a bad rap sometimes. We think that, she's the one that wasn't doing anything. Mary was in the kitchen cooking, doing all the Jesus work, right? But Mary had a moment of questioning too. If you look down in verse 32, it says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I would bet Mary and Martha might have sat around their house for about 4 days going, where is Jesus? They used the exact same words. I wouldn't say it was rehearsed, but they had used those words with each other, I would guess, over the course of 4 days before Jesus got there. And they're asking, God, where are you? If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. You could have saved him. Why didn't you show up? Why didn't you take care of our brother Lazarus? When those planes collided with the towers and with the Pentagon and the Flight 93 that crashed into the field in Pennsylvania, I am positive that millions of people were asking that exact same thing. God, where are you? Where were you? If you had been here, if you'd showed up, you could have saved everybody. That's just the snooze, sorry. Let me turn that one off. I believe that God was there. I believe that he was devastated. Maybe more so than we can ever comprehend. When you look at the account of Lazarus, what is it? It says in verse 6, verse 34, where have you laid him? Jesus asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And the very next verse says, Jesus wept. And it wasn't just he shed a few tears. That word has significant meaning. He blubbered, if you will. He was beside himself with grief. And if Jesus was beside himself with grief over one person, can you imagine the grief he felt on 9/11? Can you imagine the grief he felt for all the people who have died during the pandemic from coronavirus or because of coronavirus or aided by coronavirus? See, I believe we serve a Savior, church, that cares. When one person dies needlessly, he cares. When 3,000 people die needlessly, he cares. And just like he wept for Lazarus, I believe he wept on 9/11. I found a poem I want to share with you, and I'll be done. This is author unknown. It's a 9/11 poem. And this was written as if it was written by God to us. And it says this: you say you will never forget where you were when you heard the news on September 11, 2001. Neither will I, says God. I was on the 110th floor in a smoke-filled room with a man who called his wife to say goodbye. I held his fingers steady as he dialed the phone. I gave him the peace to say, honey, I'm not going to make it, but it's okay. I'm ready to go. I was also with his wife when he called as she fed breakfast to their children, and I held her up as she tried to understand his words and as she realized he wasn't coming home that night. I was in the stairwell of the 23rd floor when a woman cried out to me for help. I've been knocking on the door of your heart for 50 years, I said. Of course I will show you the way home. Believe in me now. I was at the base of the building with the priest ministering to the injured and devastated souls. I took him home to his flock in heaven. He heard my voice. I was on all four of those planes, in every seat, with every prayer. I was with the crew as they were overtaken. I was in the very hearts of the believers there, comforting and assuring them that their faith has saved them. I was standing next to you when you heard the terrible news. Did you sense me? I want you to know that I saw every face. Like Carrie's friend saw the face in the window. I knew every name, though not all know me. Some met me for the first time on the 86th floor. Some sought me with their last breath. Some couldn't hear me calling to them through the smoke and flames. Come to me this way. Take my hand. Some chose for the final time to ignore me, but I was there. I did not place you in the tower that day. You may not know why, but I do. However, if you were there in that explosive moment in time, would you have reached out for me? September 11, 2001 was not the end of the journey for you, but someday your journey will end, and I will be there for you as well. Seek me now while I may be found. Then at any moment, you know you're ready to go. I will be in the stairwell of your final moments. Brian, will you sing the song, please?